The screams pierced through the evening air like shattered glass. Nia Davis's exhausted feet had been carrying her home from another brutal 12-hour shift at Los Angeles General Hospital when the sound froze her blood. Her scrubs still bore traces of the day's battles, coffee stains, antiseptic smell, and the weight of lives saved and lost. She should have kept walking, should have minded her own business like every survival instinct screamed at her to do. But when she saw the small Korean boy struggling against two men twice his size in the empty playground, something deeper than instinct took over. "Hey!" she shouted, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to commanding emergency rooms. "Get away from him!" The men turned, startled by her boldness. One was reaching for something in his jacket, when Nia did the most reckless thing she'd ever done. She stepped between them and the child, her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird. "Run," she whispered to the boy behind her, never taking her eyes off the men. "Run and don't look back." What she didn't know was that she'd just saved the most precious thing in the world to the most dangerous man in Los Angeles. And in less than 5 minutes, Choi Ji-hoon would arrive to find his 7-year-old son safe in the arms of a woman who'd risked everything for a child she'd never met. Some acts of courage change everything. This one was about to turn 2 worlds upside down. The sirens were already wailing in the distance when Ji-hoon's black Escalade screeched to a halt at Griffith Park. His heart had been lodged in his throat for the past 10 minutes, ever since his security detail had called with the words, "No father ever wants to hear." "Sir, we've lost visual on Min-jun." Ji-hoon burst from the vehicle before it fully stopped, his perfectly pressed Tom Ford suit incongruous against the playground's cheerful primary colors. His dark eyes swept the scene with the calculated precision of a man who'd built an empire on reading situations in seconds. Police cars, ambulance, crime scene tape, and there, sitting on a bench with a paramedic checking him over, was his son, alive, unharmed, clinging to a woman Ji-hoon had never seen before. "Min-jun," he breathed, his voice cracking with relief as he strode toward them. The little boy looked up, his tear-streaked face brightening. "Appa!" He scrambled off the bench and launched himself into Ji-hoon's arms, speaking rapidly in Korean. "The bad men tried to take me, but the angel lady saved me. She was so brave, Appa. She stood in front of me like a superhero." Ji-hoon's arms tightened around his son as his gaze shifted to the woman who'd apparently played superhero. She was beautiful in an understated way, warm brown skin that seemed to glow under the park's lights, natural hair pulled back in a practical bun, and the kind of genuine concern in her dark eyes that he rarely encountered in his world. Her scrubs marked her as medical personnel, and there was something about the way she carried herself that spoke of quiet strength. "You saved my son," he said, his accented English careful and measured. Nia Davis looked up at the man addressing her and felt her breath catch. He was devastatingly handsome, sharp jawline, intense dark eyes, and an aura of controlled power that made the air around him seem charged. But it was the raw emotion on his face as he held his child that made her chest tighten. "Anyone would have done the same," she replied, standing and brushing off her scrubs. "He's a brave little boy. Are you okay, sweetheart?" she asked Min-jun in the gentle tone she used with her pediatric patients. Min-jun nodded enthusiastically. "She spoke to me in Korean," he told his father excitedly. "She knew the words." Ji-hoon's eyebrows rose slightly. "You speak Korean?" "Just basic phrases," Nia admitted. "I work in pediatrics at LA General. We have a lot of Korean families, so I picked up enough to comfort the children." She smiled at Min-jun. "Your son was very brave. He did exactly what I told him to do. Miss Johnson," Detective Martinez approached them, notepad in hand. "We'll need you to come down to the station tomorrow to give a full statement. What you did tonight was incredibly brave, but also incredibly dangerous." Nia nodded, suddenly feeling the adrenaline crash hitting her. Her hands were starting to shake, and she wrapped her arms around herself. I should get home. My grandmother will be worried." "Wait," Ji-hoon said, his voice carrying an authority that made everyone pause. "I need to properly thank you. You risked your life for my son. Really, it's not necessary. It is to me." His dark eyes held hers with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Please, allow me to take you to dinner. Tomorrow night." Nia hesitated. There was something about this man that set off warning bells in her head, too polished, too controlled, too powerful. But then Min Jun tugged on her scrubs. "Please, angel lady. Appa makes the best Korean food. Well, his chef does, but still." Despite herself, Nia laughed. "All right, one dinner." Jihoon pulled out his phone. "Your number." As she recited the digits, Nia couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into something much bigger than a simple thank you dinner. The way the police deferred to this man, the expensive car, the security details she'd noticed hovering at the edges, nothing about Choi Jihoon seemed simple. "I'll pick you up at 7, he said, his voice softer now. "And Miss Johnson, thank you. You gave me back the most important thing in my world." As Nia walked away, she didn't see the way Jihoon's expression hardened as he turned to his head of security. Didn't hear the rapid Korean as he demanded to know how his son had been left vulnerable. Didn't witness the cold fury that transformed the grateful father into something much more dangerous. But she felt his eyes on her until she disappeared around the corner, and something told her that her quiet life had just become infinitely more complicated. Min Jun tugged on his father's sleeve. "Appa, I like her. She smells like flowers and safety." Jihoon looked down at his son, the only person in the world who could make him feel human, and made a decision that would change everything. "So do I, Min Jun, so do I." Nia stared at her reflection in her grandmother's old vanity mirror, second-guessing every choice she'd made in the past hour. The simple black dress she'd chosen felt too formal, then too casual, then too formal again. She'd changed her mind about her hair 3 times before settling on letting her natural curls frame her face. "You're nervous?" observed her grandmother, Nana Rose, from the doorway. At 78, Rose Johnson still had the sharp eyes of the high school principal she'd once been. "It's just dinner, Nana. A thank you dinner." Rose settled into the chair beside the vanity, her knowing smile making Nia fidget. "And this man who's taking you to this just dinner, what do you know about him?" "He's Korean. He has a 7-year-old son, and he's grateful I helped his child." Nia applied lip gloss with more concentration than necessary. "That's all I need to know for one meal. Baby girl, I didn't raise you to be naive. A man who can afford to take you to Nobu on a Tuesday night isn't just anybody. You be careful." Before Nia could respond, her phone buzzed. "I'm here, Jihoon." She kissed her grandmother's cheek and grabbed her purse. "Don't wait up. I always wait up. It's what grandmothers do." Nia stepped outside her modest apartment building in Koreatown and stopped short. Jihoon stood beside a sleek black Mercedes, looking like he'd stepped off the cover of GQ. His charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, his hair styled with casual precision, and when he smiled at her, she felt her knees go slightly weak. "You look beautiful," he said, opening the passenger door for her. "Thank you." She slid into the car, immediately overwhelmed by the luxury, leather seats that probably cost more than her monthly rent, a dashboard that looked like it belonged in a spaceship, and the subtle scent of expensive cologne. "How is Min Jun today?" she asked as Jihoon pulled into traffic. "Better. He slept through the night for the first time in months." Jihoon glanced at her. "He asked if you were really an angel. I told him angels don't usually wear scrubs, but I might have been wrong." Nia laughed. "I'm definitely not an angel. I'm just someone who couldn't walk away from a child in trouble." "That's exactly what makes you one." The restaurant was everything Nia had expected and more. Dim lighting, impeccable service, and prices that made her grateful she wasn't paying. But what surprised her was how easy it was to talk to Jihoon. He asked thoughtful questions about her work, listened intently to her stories about her patients, and shared carefully edited tales about raising Min Jun as a single father. "His mother?" Nia asked gently when Jihoon mentioned Min Jun's nightmares. "Cancer, 2 years ago." The pain in his voice was real and raw. "Min Jun was only 5. He's been struggling." "That's understandable. Losing a parent at that age." Nia reached across the table and touched his hand briefly. "I'm sorry." The simple gesture of comfort nearly undid Jihoon. When was the last time someone had touched him without wanting something? When had anyone offered him sympathy without an agenda? He's been seeing therapists, but nothing helps. Until yesterday. You were the first person he's trusted since his mother died. "Children have good instincts about people," Nia said. "He's a special little boy." "He is. He's everything good about me and nothing bad." Something in his tone made Nia study his face more carefully. "What do you do for work, Jihoon?" the question he'd been dreading. Import-export business, mostly between Korea and the US. It wasn't technically a lie. He did import and export, just not the legal kind of goods. But the way her face lit up with interest made guilt twist in his stomach. That must be fascinating. Do you travel a lot? Some, but I try to stay close to home for Min-jun. As the evening progressed, Nia found herself drawn deeper into Ji-hoon's orbit. He was intelligent, funny in a dry way that caught her off guard, and clearly devoted to his son. But there were moments when his phone buzzed and his expression went cold, when he spoke in rapid Korean to someone outside, when his eyes swept the restaurant like he was cataloguing exits. That reminded her this man had depth she couldn't fathom. "I should get you home," he said as they finished dessert. "You mentioned an early shift tomorrow." In the car, the tension between them was palpable. When Ji-hoon walked her to her door, Nia turned to thank him and found herself much closer to him than she'd intended. "Thank you for dinner, it was lovely. Thank you for saving my son." His voice was rougher now, his dark eyes intense. "And for reminding me that there are still good people in the world." For a moment, Nia thought he might kiss her. Part of her wanted him to, but instead he stepped back, his control firmly in place. "Can I see you again?" he asked. "I'd like that." As she watched his car disappear into the night, Nia touched her lips, wondering what it would have felt like to kiss Choi Ji-hoon. What she didn't know was that 2 blocks away, Ji-hoon sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel and fighting the urge to turn around. He'd built his empire on control, on keeping emotions locked away where they couldn't be used against him. But one evening with Nia Davis had shattered his carefully constructed walls. His phone rang. "Boss, we found the men who tried to take the kid. What do you want us to do with them?" Ji-hoon's voice turned to ice. "Make sure they understand that touching my family has consequences, permanent ones." As he drove toward the warehouse district, Ji-hoon tried to reconcile the man who'd just shared dessert with a beautiful nurse, and the man who was about to ensure 2 kidnappers never threatened anyone again. Some lines couldn't be uncrossed, but for the first time in years, he wondered if some lines were worth crossing anyway. 3 weeks later, Nia was falling in love, and it terrified her. It had started innocently enough: coffee dates between her shifts, lunches in the hospital cafeteria when Ji-hoon would stop by with Min-jun for routine checkups that weren't routine at all. The little boy had attached himself to her with the fierce devotion only children could manage, and watching Ji-hoon with his son had melted every defense Nia had tried to maintain. "You're glowing," her colleague Dr. Sarah Kim observed as they reviewed patient charts. "Please tell me this is about that mysterious man who's been bringing you gourmet coffee every morning." "It's not mysterious. His name is Ji-hoon. He's a businessman, and he's—" Nia paused, searching for words. "He's complicated. Good complicated or run for the hills complicated?" Before Nia could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from Ji-hoon. "Emergency at work. Can you pick up Min-jun from school? I'll explain later." "I have to go," Nia told Sarah, already grabbing her purse. "Cover for me." 20 minutes later, she stood outside Wilshire Academy, an exclusive private school that probably cost more than her annual salary. When Min-jun spotted her, his face lit up like Christmas morning. "Angel lady, did Appa send you?" "He did, sweetheart. He had a work emergency." Min-jun chatted excitedly as they walked to her modest Honda Civic, telling her about his day, his friends, his art project. It wasn't until they were driving that he grew quiet. "Angel lady? Are you going to be my new Ioma?" Amara's heart clenched. "Oh, honey, your daddy and I are just friends." "But you make him smile. He doesn't smile for anyone else, and you make the nightmares go away." "I do? When I think about you being there, the scary dreams don't come. Appa says you're magic." Nia pulled into the parking garage of Ji-hoon's building, a gleaming high-rise in downtown LA that screamed money and power. The doorman knew Min-jun by name and directed them to a private elevator that required a key card. "Penthouse," Min-jun announced proudly as they rode up. "We have the whole top floor." The elevator opened directly into Ji-hoon's apartment, and Amara's breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Los Angeles. The decor was minimalist perfection, and everything screamed expensive taste. This wasn't just wealth, this was serious money. "Wow," she breathed. "Appa says our old house in Korea was bigger, but I like it here because it's just us." Min-jun led her to the kitchen, where he immediately began preparing a snack with the efficiency of a child used to taking care of himself. As Nia watched him, questions multiplied in her mind. What kind of import-export business afforded this lifestyle? Why did a 7-year-old know how to work a security system that looked military-grade? And why did every surface in this beautiful home feel cold despite the warm touches clearly added for Min-jun? "I'm home," Ji-hoon's voice carried from the elevator, followed by rapid Korean that sounded like orders being given to someone. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, and Amara's pulse quickened as it always did when she saw him. But tonight something was different. His usually perfect appearance was slightly disheveled. There was tension in his shoulders, and his eyes held a hardness she'd never seen before. "Thank you for getting him," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "I'm sorry for the short notice." "It's fine. We had fun, didn't we, Min-jun?" The little boy nodded enthusiastically, launching into a recap of their afternoon. But Nia noticed how Ji-hoon's eyes kept darting to his phone, how his jaw remained tight despite his smile. "Min-jun, go wash up for dinner," Ji-hoon said in Korean. When they were alone, Nia studied his face. "Are you okay? You seem—" "I'm fine." The words came out sharper than intended, and Ji-hoon immediately softened his tone. "Work was stressful today. Thank you for taking care of him." "Ji-hoon, what exactly do you do? This apartment, Min-jun's school, the way people defer to you? I told you, import-export." "That's not an answer, that's a deflection." For a moment, Ji-hoon looked like he might tell her the truth, but then his phone rang, and she saw him glance at the screen and go completely still. "I have to take this," he said, already moving toward his office. "Make yourself at home." Nia watched him disappear, noting how he switched to rapid Korean the moment he thought he was out of earshot. The tone was cold, authoritative, and completely unlike the gentle man she'd been falling for. She was debating whether to leave when Min-jun reappeared, freshly washed and carrying a photo album. "Want to see pictures of Ioma?" he asked, climbing onto the couch beside her. The photos showed a beautiful Korean woman with a gentle smile, often pictured with a much younger Ji-hoon who looked softer somehow, less guarded. There were family photos, vacation shots, candid moments of pure happiness. "She was beautiful," Nia said softly. "Appa says I have her eyes but his stubborn streak." Min-jun turned the page. "This was our house in Seoul. Appa had to leave after Ioma died because of his work." "What kind of work did your daddy do in Korea?" Min-jun shrugged. "Important stuff. People were always bowing to him and calling him Sajangnim. But he was sad all the time after Ioma died, so we came here for a new start." Sajangnim boss. Amara's Korean was limited, but she knew that word. And the way Min-jun said it, with casual acceptance of his father's authority over others, sent a chill down her spine. "Min-jun, has your daddy ever—" "I'm sorry about that." Ji-hoon's voice cut through her question as he returned, his expression carefully neutral again. "Business never sleeps. What kind of business requires calls at 8 p.m. that make you look like you want to kill someone?" The words slipped out before Nia could stop them, and the silence that followed was deafening. Ji-hoon's face went completely blank, and Min-jun looked between them with the intuitive worry of a child sensing adult tension. "I think I should go," Nia said, standing abruptly. "Amara, wait." "No, it's fine. You clearly have things to handle, and I shouldn't have pried." She kissed Min-jun's forehead. "Be good, sweetheart." Ji-hoon caught her arm gently as she headed for the elevator. "Please don't go. Not like this." "Then tell me the truth, Ji-hoon. Because whatever you're involved in, it's bigger than import-export, and I'm starting to feel like I'm dating a stranger." For a moment, she saw something raw and desperate in his eyes. But then, the mask slipped back into place. "Some things are better left unknown," he said quietly. "Trust me on that." "That's exactly the problem," Nia replied, stepping into the elevator. "I don't know if I can." As the doors closed between them, Ji-hoon pressed his palm against the metal, his carefully constructed world beginning to crumble. Behind him, Min-jun's small voice asked the question that would haunt him all night. "Appa, is the angel lady coming back?" Ji-hoon stared at his reflection in the elevator doors and wondered if he was about to lose the two best things that had ever happened to him, and if keeping Nia safe meant letting her go before she discovered the truth about the monster she'd been falling in love with. The truth came to Nia in the worst possible way. She'd been avoiding Ji-hoon's calls for 3 days. throwing herself into work to avoid thinking about the growing list of inconsistencies in his story. But when Minjun showed up in her ER with his nanny, sporting a fever and asking for "Angel Lady," her resolve crumbled. "Where's your daddy?" she asked, checking his temperature while he clung to her hand. "Important meeting," the nanny, Mrs. Park, replied in broken English. "He say bring Minjun to you if sick." Amara's heart melted despite her confusion. Even when they were fighting, Ji-hoon trusted her with his son's care. After treating Minjun's minor ear infection and getting him settled in the pediatric ward for observation, she finally returned Ji-hoon's frantic calls. "How is he?" His voice was tight with worry. "He's fine. Ear infection. But we caught it early. He's sleeping now. Thank God, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Ji-hoon, you don't have to—" "He's my son, Amara. Of course I'm coming." The line went dead, leaving Nia staring at her phone and wondering why a simple ear infection required such urgency. Her answer came when Ji-hoon arrived with an entourage that made the entire ER go quiet. 4 men in expensive suits flanked him as he strode through the automatic doors, their eyes constantly scanning for threats. The way they moved, the bulges under their jackets, the deference of everyone around them, it painted a picture Nia didn't want to acknowledge. "Where is he?" Ji-hoon demanded, his usual careful English replaced by clipped authority. "Room 314. But Ji-hoon, the security stays with me." His tone brooked no argument. "Someone tried to hurt my son once. It won't happen again." As they rode the elevator to the pediatric ward, Nia studied the men surrounding them. They weren't bodyguards. They were soldiers. And the way they looked at Ji-hoon wasn't just respect, it was the kind of loyalty that came from fear and absolute power. Minjun was awake when they entered his room, his face lighting up when he saw his father. "Appa, Angel Lady made me feel better." Ji-hoon's entire demeanor shifted as he gathered his son into his arms, the dangerous man disappearing behind the worried father. But his security remained posted outside the door, and Nia noticed how other hospital staff suddenly found reasons to avoid the 3rd floor. "I need to speak with Dr. Johnson privately," Ji-hoon told Mrs. Park in Korean. "Stay with Minjun." He led Nia to an empty conference room, and the moment the door closed, she saw the mask slip back into place. "Thank you for taking care of him. It's my job, Ji-hoon, but I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth this time." His jaw tightened. "Amara, what kind of import-export business requires armed security? What kind of businessman has people bowing and calling him boss in Korean? And why does everyone in this hospital suddenly look terrified?" Ji-hoon was quiet for so long that Nia thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "There are things about my life that you're better off not knowing. That's not your choice to make. I'm falling in love with you, and I don't even know who you are." The confession hung between them like a live wire. Ji-hoon's control cracked, and for a moment Nia saw the man behind the mask, vulnerable, desperate, and completely in love with her too. "You want the truth?" His voice was rough with emotion. "The truth is that I'm the last person you should love. The truth is that everything good and innocent about you could be destroyed just by being near me. The truth is that I would burn down half of Los Angeles before I let anyone hurt you, and that should terrify you. Ji-hoon, you're scaring me. Good, you should be scared, because the man you think you're falling in love with doesn't exist. He's a fantasy I created, because for the first time in my life, I wanted to be someone worthy of you." Before Nia could respond, Ji-hoon's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and his face went deadly calm. "I have to take this." He answered in rapid Korean, his tone shifting to something that made Amara's blood run cold. Even without understanding the words, she recognized the sound of orders being given, orders that would have consequences. When he hung up, Ji-hoon looked at her with something like grief in his eyes. "I have to go. There's a situation that requires my attention." "What kind of situation?" "The kind that proves everything I just told you." He moved toward the door, then stopped. "Amara, I need you to promise me something. If anyone ever approaches you asking about me or Minjun, you call this number immediately." He handed her a card with only a phone number on it. "Don't ask questions. Don't try to handle it yourself. Just call." "Ji-hoon, what aren't you telling me?" He looked at her for a long moment, memorizing her face like he might never see it again. "I'm telling you that loving me could get you killed, and I'm selfish enough to love you anyway. He left her standing in the conference room, her hands shaking as she stared at the card. Through the window, she watched him speak briefly to his security team before disappearing into the elevator. It was only later, when she was checking on Min-jun one last time before her shift ended, that she overheard two nurses talking in the hallway. "Did you see the news? That warehouse fire in Koreatown? They're saying it was gang-related." "My cousin works for LAPD. He says it wasn't a fire. It was a message. Someone crossed the Korean Mafia, and they made an example." Amara's blood turned to ice as pieces clicked into place. The timing of Ji-hoon's emergency, the phone call that had made him go cold, the way he'd looked at her like he was saying goodbye. She pulled out her phone and searched for news about the warehouse fire. The reports were vague, but one detail made her sink into the nearest chair. The warehouse had been owned by a company linked to human trafficking. The same kind of men who had tried to take Min-jun. Ji-hoon hadn't just left to handle business. He'd left to handle the people who had threatened his son, and the way he'd done it left no doubt about what kind of man she'd been falling in love with. Her phone buzzed with a text. "Min-jun is asking for you. Please don't let my sins keep you from him. He needs you more than I deserve you." Nia stared at the message, her heart breaking and her world tilting off its axis, because despite everything, the lies, the danger, the terrifying glimpse into Ji-hoon's real world, she was still in love with him, and that scared her more than anything else. The confrontation came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, in the parking garage of Amara's apartment building. She'd been avoiding Ji-hoon for a week, ignoring his calls and texts, throwing herself into work to avoid thinking about the impossible situation she'd found herself in. But she couldn't avoid Min-jun's tearful questions when Mrs. Park brought him to the hospital for a follow-up appointment. "Why won't you come see me anymore, angel lady? Did I do something wrong?" The heartbreak in his 7-year-old voice had nearly destroyed her. She'd spent the rest of her shift crying in supply closets and questioning every choice she'd made since that night in the park. Now, as she walked toward her car after another brutal shift, she wasn't surprised to find Ji-hoon waiting for her. What surprised her was that he was alone. "No security detail?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "I sent them away. This conversation is just between us." He looked exhausted, she realized. The perfect composure was cracked, his usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. There were shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. "How's Min-jun?" Heartbroken. He doesn't understand why the person he's come to love as a mother figure has suddenly disappeared from his life. The words hit like a physical blow. "That's not fair." "None of this is fair, Amara, but it's the reality we're living in." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them like a chasm. "I know what you did," she said finally. "The warehouse. The men who tried to take Min-jun." Ji-hoon's expression didn't change. "And what do you think I did?" "I think you made sure they could never hurt anyone again. I think you used methods that would horrify me if I knew the details. And I think you did it because someone threatened your son." "Does that change how you see me?" Nia had been asking herself the same question for days. "I don't know. The rational part of me says I should run as far and as fast as I can. That getting involved with you is dangerous and stupid and could destroy my life. And the irrational part? The irrational part understands why you did it. The irrational part has seen how you are with Min-jun, how you've been with me. The irrational part knows that despite everything you've done, you're not a monster." Ji-hoon stepped closer, and she could see the desperate hope in his eyes. "I never wanted you to be part of this world. I tried to keep you separate, to protect you from the truth. By lying to me, by loving you enough to want to be better than I am." The simple honesty of it broke something open in Amara's chest. "Ji-hoon, I know what I'm asking is impossible. I know that loving me means accepting things about my life that go against everything you believe in. But I also know that Min-jun needs you, and I—" His voice cracked slightly. "I need you too, more than I've ever needed anything." "What exactly are you asking me?" "I'm asking you to choose. Choose to walk away, and I'll make sure you're never bothered by my world again. You can go back to your quiet life, your safe job, your predictable future, or choose to stay, knowing that it means accepting all of me, the parts you love and the parts that terrify you." Nia closed her eyes, thinking of Min-jun's tear-streaked face, of the way Jihoon looked at her like she was his salvation, of the life she'd built that suddenly felt empty without them in it. If I stay, what does that mean? What does my life look like? It means you'll always be protected but never completely safe. It means you'll be part of a world where violence is sometimes necessary and justice doesn't always come from the law. It means loving a man who has blood on his hands but would spill more to keep you and Minjun safe. And if someone comes after me because of you, Jihoon's eyes went deadly cold. Then they'll learn why crossing my family is the last mistake they ever make. The possessive certainty in his voice should have terrified her. Instead, it sent a shiver of something else entirely down her spine. I need guarantees, she said finally. If I do this, if I choose you, I need to know that you'll never lie to me again. No more half-truths, no more protecting me from reality. If I'm going to be part of your world, I need to know what that world looks like. Done. And Minjun's safety comes first, always, before your business, before your pride, before everything. It already does. And you have to promise me that you'll try to find a way out. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. I won't ask you to abandon everything overnight, but I need to know you want something better for Minjun's future. Jihoon was quiet for a long moment. That's the hardest promise you could ask for. But will you make it? For you? For him? I'll try. Nia studied his face, seeing the truth in his eyes. This man who commanded fear and respect from dangerous people was laying his heart bare for her, offering her everything he had and asking for the impossible in return. Okay, she whispered. Okay? I choose you. I choose this insane, dangerous, impossible situation because I love you and I love that little boy and I can't imagine my life without either of you in it. The relief that crossed Jihoon's face was so profound it took her breath away. He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, cupping her face in his hands. Are you sure? Because once you're mine, Amara, I'll never let you go. I'll protect you with everything I have, but I'll also never be able to let you walk away. Then don't let me go, she whispered against his lips. Keep me, keep us safe, and let me love you the way you deserve to be loved. When he kissed her, it was with the desperate passion of a man who'd thought he'd lost everything and found it again. It was a promise and a claim and a prayer all at once. I love you, he murmured against her lips. I love you so much it scares me. Good, Nia replied, echoing his words from weeks ago. You should be scared, because I'm about to turn your carefully controlled world upside down. As they held each other in the dim light of the parking garage, both of them knew they were crossing a line they could never uncross. But for the first time since his wife's death, Jihoon felt hope for the future, and for the first time in her life, Nia felt like she was exactly where she belonged. 6 months later, Yama, you're burning the pancakes again. Nia laughed as Minjun's voice carried from the kitchen of their new home, a sprawling house in the hills that was both fortress and sanctuary. She'd insisted on cooking breakfast herself, despite Jihoon's offers to hire a chef, and her attempts at Korean-style pancakes were still hit or miss. I heard that, young man, she called back, flipping the slightly too brown hotiok with more enthusiasm than skill. Strong arms wrapped around her waist from behind, and she melted into Jihoon's embrace as he pressed a kiss to her neck. He's not wrong, he murmured, reaching around her to adjust the heat. But I love that you try. Your son has no respect for his new mother's learning curve. My son adores his new mother, even if she does burn breakfast. Nia turned in his arms, studying the face that had become more precious to her than breathing. The dangerous edge was still there, would always be there, but it was tempered now by something softer. Love had changed them both. Any word on the Seoul situation? She asked quietly. Jihoon's expression tightened slightly. Handled. The families have agreed to the new territory divisions. There shouldn't be any more trouble. It had taken months, but Jihoon was slowly transitioning his organization toward more legitimate enterprises. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't fast, but he was keeping his promise to find a way out. For Minjun's future, for their future. Good, because I have news. Something in her tone made Jihoon go very still. What kind of news? Nia smiled, pulling the pregnancy test from her pocket. The kind that means you're going to need to baby-proof this house all over again. For a moment, Jihoon just stared at the test, his face cycling through shock, joy, and terror in rapid succession. "You're pregnant?" "We're pregnant. But we've only been married for 2 months. Apparently your swimmers are very determined." Ji-hoon lifted her off her feet, spinning her around the kitchen as she laughed. When he set her down, his eyes were suspiciously bright. "A baby," he whispered, his hand coming to rest on her still flat stomach. "Our baby. Are you happy?" Happy doesn't begin to cover it. He kissed her softly, reverently. "I love you, Mrs. Choi." "I love you too, Mr. Choi." "Yama Appa, the pancakes are definitely burning now." They broke apart, laughing, rushing to save breakfast, while Min-jun supervised from his perch on the counter. As Nia watched Ji-hoon help his son flip pancakes, teaching him the proper technique with infinite patience, she marveled at the life they'd built together. It wasn't the safe, predictable future she'd once imagined for herself. There were still security protocols, still late-night phone calls, still moments when the dangerous reality of Ji-hoon's world intruded on their domestic bliss. But it was theirs. "When will you tell Min-jun about the baby?" Ji-hoon asked as they sat down to breakfast. "Soon. I want to make sure everything's okay first." "Everything will be perfect," Min-jun announced confidently, apparently having overheard despite their whispered conversation. "Because angel ladies make the best iomas, and the best iomas make the best babies." Nia and Ji-hoon exchanged amused glances over his head. "How did you—" "I'm 7, not deaf," Min-jun said with the dignity of someone much older. "Plus, you've been putting your hand on your tummy and smiling the same way Yama used to before she told me about the baby that never came." The casual reference to his first mother's miscarriage, something Nia hadn't known about, made her heart clench. But Min-jun seemed at peace with it, secure in the love of his new family. "Are you okay with having a little brother or sister?" she asked gently. "Are you kidding? I've been asking Appa for a sibling forever. Plus, now I get to be the big brother who teaches them everything." He paused, considering. "But they have to learn Korean and English and how to make proper kimchi. It's important for the family business." "What family business?" Nia asked, raising an eyebrow at Ji-hoon. "The restaurant chain we're opening," Ji-hoon replied smoothly. "Completely legitimate, I promise." "Uh-huh. And what exactly will these restaurants serve?" "The best Korean soul food fusion in Los Angeles," Min-jun announced proudly. "Appa says we're going to combine his Iyama's recipes with your Nana's recipes and make something completely new." Nia felt tears prick her eyes. It was such a perfect metaphor for their life together, taking the best parts of their different worlds and creating something beautiful and new. "I think that sounds perfect," she said, reaching across the table to take both their hands. As they sat there in their sun-drenched kitchen, planning their future over burnt pancakes and fresh orange juice, Nia reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She'd saved a child she didn't know, only to discover he belonged to the most dangerous man in Los Angeles. But in saving Min-jun, she'd also saved herself, and maybe, just maybe, she'd saved Ji-hoon too. Love, she'd learned, wasn't always safe or predictable or easy. Sometimes it was dangerous and complicated, and required more courage than you thought you possessed. But when it was real, when it was the kind of love that transformed you into someone better than you were before, it was worth every risk. "I love our family," she said softly. "So do I," Ji-hoon replied, bringing her hand to his lips. "So do I." Outside, the city of Los Angeles stretched out before them, full of possibilities and new beginnings. And in their kitchen, surrounded by the laughter of the child who'd brought them together and the promise of the child they'd created, Nia knew she'd made the right choice. Sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was fall in love, but sometimes it was also the most necessary.